I mean, it's sort of reminiscent. The last couple years, like during the war in Gaza, when Somalia was seizing boats, they would release videos sort of like this, showing, I believe, helicopters sometime flying to boats and people with guns taking the boat over. I'm not saying they're equivalent situations, but there's been a number of those I've seen in recent years. Sandy D says shock and awe. Wendigo says typical U.S. behavior. Peace Nola says propaganda. Xenodermis says there's probably drugs on board. Now, the U.S. government hasn't said anything about drugs being on board. Thank you, Hairball. Hairball says if this oil was headed for China, are we going to see a reprisal from them? It's a good question. So multiple articles said that most of the Venezuelan oil ends up being refined in China. How much of it gets there, I don't know. If China is benefiting from discount oil from Venezuela, is that something where maybe behind the scenes they would be saying to the Trump administration, don't stop the oil flow to China? Then there's a question about how it might impact oil prices. But it's a fair question about China. I'm sorry. You know what? I made a boo-boo. Dangman said that, yes, you're right, Dangman. Yemen was not Somalia. There have been in the past Somalian pirates, but yes, Yemen, of course, during the war in Gaza, the Houthi rebels were known for attacking ships, the Houthis. So my brain stopped working. So thank you, Dangman, for the correction. Yes, sorry, that was just my brain not working and me making a mistake. If you look up the skipper on marine traffic, you can find it there. I think the skipper on marinetraffic.com. Thanks, Ursula Anderson, for your support. Captain Jerry Donnelly says the U.S. Coast Guard's port security units are deployable special forces organized for sustained expeditionary security. According to CBS News, again, the forces that did this, thank you, Captain Jerry Donnelly. According to CBS News, the forces that did this were the Coast Guard's Maritime Security and Response Team. Thanks, Hairball1621, for your support. Also, thanks, Jasper Axelrad, who says, if this tanker is part of the Russian dark fleet, if it isn't insured, it leaves very little protection for the tanker and may not impact insurance rates. Thanks, Phobiarg, for your support. Let me show you something about oil prices, too. So, check this out. Oil settles higher after U.S. seizes tanker off Venezuela's coast. Now, CDN Roach says this will 100% raise global insurance rates for shipping. I will say this. So, insurers might think, well, for a couple things. Insurers might think that this kind of thing makes it more likely that an insured ship could be boarded. Maybe not even by the U.S. Maybe an insurer would say, oh, well, this kind of thing makes it more likely that other countries could say, or other actors could try to strike back by capturing some Western affiliated oil tanker. I don't know, but I could see, there's an argument. You could imagine a situation in which insurance companies think that this kind of activity makes incidents with secured with insured ships more likely, even if this wasn't insured. So Reuters says oil prices settled higher today after officials said the U.S. seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, adding to concerns about immediate supplies. Brent crude futures rose 0.4%, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 0.4%. The U.S. seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. The officials did not name the tanker. We've been hearing other reports about that. Oil prices will likely react more sharply if the seizure is followed up by more such actions, said one oil analyst, Ed Hayden Briffett. That's interesting. Oil prices will likely react more sharply if the seizure is followed up by more such actions. That's got to be something President Trump is aware of. I mean, President Trump, we were covering last night. He started his, reportedly he's going to be doing a bunch of appearances across the country talking about lowering prices and raising paychecks, talking about affordability, although he hates the word affordability. But if he's worried about people feeling like they can't afford things, it certainly does not help with that if oil prices start going up. The tanker seizure, says Reuters, further inflames concerns about immediate supplies in a market that was already worried about movements of Venezuelan, Iranian, and Russian barrels. You know, Ukraine has been attacking shadow fleet boats, Russian shadow fleet boats too. Yeah, I mean, look, it says it right here. A Ukrainian official earlier today said the country's sea drones had struck and disabled a tanker involved in trading Russian oil, the third such strike by Ukraine in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, a divided Federal Reserve in the U.S. Reduced its benchmark interest rate by 0.25 percentage point, as expected, which could help lift oil demand by boosting economic growth, which would be something to pressure prices to go higher. So worth watching how that all plays out. Fading light says always with the oil. Gen Xer thinks the U.S. is now no different than the Houthis? One of our viewers said, I voted for this. Brian Busick. All right, let me share some more reporting about this. There's been a bunch of reporting about this. We are bringing you live coverage of the U.S. seizing an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela today. Wow. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any updates on this. But there's some more reporting on this too I want to mention. Let's see here. Hold on one moment. Just hold on one moment. So I mentioned that the AP article about this said using U.S. forces to seize an oil tanker is incredibly unusual. Now, there have been U.S. seizures of tankers in the past. One of our viewers, Firejack, had written about that. Now, I'm looking to try to find some details about some of these. I see some mention online. Oh, maybe it's this one. How do you get this link to open? Why won't the links open? The links won't work. That's not good. Okay, so for example, let me show you this. I'm going to show you a Department of Justice thing. Why is it saying it takes 60 seconds to refresh? Hang on a moment here. Here. So this was a press release from 2020. This says largest U.S. seizure of Iranian fuel from 4 tankers. Did they seize the tankers? This was in 2020. The Justice Department announced the successful disruption of a multi-million-dollar fuel shipment by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that was bound for Venezuela. Those were fuel shipments from Iran. So in this case, the U.S. confiscated the cargo from 4 vessels. They didn't confiscate the vessels. But this is an example of, in 2020, the U.S. seizing Iranian fuel from 4 tankers. But that's not a case in which the vessels were seized. Anyways, that's just, I don't know the whole history of seizures. Let's see. Thanks for writing in, Firejack. I'll have to do some more reading on this later. I'm not going to spend a lot of time researching it here, but thanks, by the way, to our moderators who are here. Hold on. As we will show you the video. Yeah, today the ship was seized. Thanks to our moderators, we have moderating right now Beth Mythical, Ruth on YouTube, Janet B, Keisha Fowler. Thank you. Also on Twitch. What happened to Twitch? Hold on. I got to pull it up here. 13 Alamo, DeBears, LB Prairie Dawn, Matthew Kohai 3, and Sarah moderating there. Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha on X. Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley over there on Facebook. And Shannon Davis Hughes. Thank you. One of our viewers, Jim Gizmo, says, good thing nobody was defending the ship. Manute D'Official says, the invasion is inevitable. James Berryman says, I voted for this. Lebowski thinks my president is a huge embarrassing failure. Julian Stone says it's free oil. Jack says we seized an oil tanker with 0 casualties before we seized a drug boat. Wild. Let me give you some more reporting I saw about this. The Wall Street Journal said something very interesting. The Wall Street Journal said, this is what the Wall Street Journal reported. They said that this seizure of the tanker came shortly after. They say that the U.S. No, it said shortly after the Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado left Venezuela on a boat. They report that she basically snuck out of the country. You know, I thought they posted that the U.S. helped. What was the original quote from the article? Did they change it? Because I posted it. Originally, the Wall Street Journal said that... Yeah, originally the article said U.S. sneaked her out of the country. I think they may have updated her, because I cut and paste that from the article. Now the article says that the move came after she left the country on a boat. But they also say that her leaving the country, her escape, potentially gave the Trump administration an opening to take more aggressive action against the Maduro regime. I think she said she's headed to, didn't she say she's headed to Oslo to get the Nobel Peace Prize? I got to check up on that too. But anyways, again, the Wall Street Journal reported that Maria Corina Machado left Venezuela on Tuesday by boat. She snuck out, basically. They say in a secret effort to reach Norway and collect her Peace Prize. Yeah, she hasn't collected the prize yet. She wasn't able to be there at today's ceremony, but she has said she will go to Oslo. So I don't know if there's any connection with her leaving. You know, it's a little confusing. But the originally the Wall Street Journal article said earlier today, it said that this operation came hours after. They said originally the U.S. sneaked her out, but the current article doesn't say that it was the U.S. who sneaked her out. It says allies helped. The U.S. sneaked her out of the country, and they say that her escape potentially gave the Trump administration an opening to take more aggressive action against the Maduro regime. So what I also don't understand is, so she left to get the Peace Prize, but will she go back? Now, you might say, well, why would she want to go back? But the thing is, if you're her and you're leading the opposition, maybe you think you can better lead it being there, and you don't want to be seen as escaping. But I don't know. Is part of her leaving, getting her out before some kind of ramped up military action is going to take place? That I don't know. It's an interesting question. No injuries have been reported in this incident, by the way. I guess if one has nothing to do with the other, if she was really snuck out of Venezuela just to get the Peace Prize, it's quite interesting timing that it just so happened that she left the country the day before this happened. And while the U.S. is seeming to threaten more, well, certainly President Trump has threatened, attacks on land. Hasselhoff thinks we sure are trying too hard to provoke Venezuela. let's see what else here. Right now, the Wall Street Journal also said her leaving the country carries the risk of diminishing her influence at home. So I don't know if she's coming back to Venezuela. Are they gonna sneak her back into Venezuela after sneaking her out? If she was indeed snuck out, I would think probably she was. So now Ed Wiebe thinks they took her to safety, but is something happening soon there in Venezuela? Anyways, that's a really interesting question as to whether was she snuck out really just to get the Peace Prize or for some other reason. One of our viewers said, Dr. Loviage says the fact that she left her country for an award, come on now, something bigger is coming. Covert data says her followers feel abandoned. Again, it seems a little odd that she would go through the risk of leaving the country only to get the Nobel Peace Prize. Especially if she wants to get snuck back in the country. Like, would you really do that just to get the Peace Prize? You'd go through all this risk? It seems strange to me. Let me see if I can get, it seems like it's sort of like an unrelated story, but it might be really related. Let me just show you something here. Just for example, here's this AP article. Venezuela's Machado absent from Nobel ceremony, but her travel to Oslo draws mixed reactions at home. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was absent today from the ceremony in Norway, in which she was supposed to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. But confirmation that she was traveling to Europe elicited mixed feelings in her country, where many backed her precisely because she had not left her homeland. Neither Machado nor her staff explained when and how she left Venezuela for Oslo. In an audio recording of a phone call published on the Nobel website, Machado said she wouldn't be able to arrive in time for the ceremony, but should be in Oslo. She has not been seen in public since January 9th, when she was briefly detained after joining supporters in an anti-government protest in Caracas. That's almost a year ago. Remember, she was supposed to run for president, and then Maduro didn't let her run, so there was another candidate who ran basically in her place, Edmundo Gonzalez, I think it was, but it was known that she was the leader of the opposition, and the evidence very, very strongly suggested that the opposition won the election convincingly, but then Maduro declared himself the winner and cracked down on protesters. Yeah, this is a really odd story. Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the person who ran for president in her place, he sought asylum in Spain last year after a Venezuelan court issued a warrant for his arrest. His son-in-law is among the hundreds of people who are in prison for what human rights organizations have determined to be political reasons. Independent experts backed by the UN, Venezuelan non-governmental organizations, and other groups have documented extensively the oppression throughout Maduro's presidency. It is unclear when and how Machado and Gonzalez could return to Venezuela. This is a very weird thing going on here. It just feels like something else is happening here. Again, I find it very hard to believe that she went to all this trouble to get snuck out of Venezuela simply to receive the Peace Prize. That doesn't really make much sense to me. but I don't know what's going on. It just seems strange. Sisi thinks they plan on taking out Maduro and then she will go back. Bodge CFY says something else is going on. Oh, she arrives in Oslo. Was she already there today? Did she already make it there? Here, look. Reuters says something about it. Hold on. Look, she arrives. Nobel laureate Machado arrives in Oslo hours after award ceremony. Oh, I think I have a video on this I can show you. Hold on. We'll show you the video. But the video is from a little earlier. But let me just show you this. There she is. Defies travel ban, arrives in Oslo. After more than a year mostly spent in hiding and in defiance of a decade-long travel ban, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado arrived in Norway today. Well, I guess it's Thursday now there. Hours after a ceremony to award her the Nobel Peace Prize. She has been banned from leaving Venezuela since 2014. What's going on with this story? So confusing. Here, look. Nobel laureate Machado arrives in Oslo hours after award ceremony. She secretly left Venezuela for Oslo in defiance of a decade-long travel ban imposed by authorities in her home country, and after spending more than a year in hiding. The head of the Nobel Committee said, "I can confirm she has arrived in Oslo." Machado left Venezuela by boat on Tuesday and traveled to the Caribbean island of Curacao, from where she departed on a private plane for Norway, according to a person familiar with the matter. The source said her escape from the Venezuelan coast was handled by her security staff. It's very weird. Earlier, the Wall Street Journal said the U.S. got her out, but then they deleted that part of the article. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on her travel to Curacao. I don't know what's going on with this story. This is all very strange, I think. Bringo thinks she's not going back. Well, would she go back if there was regime change? Let me show you that video, which I think might be from a day or two ago about that was with that article. Hold on. Hang on a second here. Show you that. Here's the Reuters video about this.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was due to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo on Wednesday. However, the Nobel Institute says she'll not attend the award ceremony. Machado is the subject of a decade-long travel ban imposed by her home country. She has spent more than a year in hiding, and her current whereabouts are unknown. In 2024,
To repeat, this video is like a day old. So reportedly, she is now in Oslo. She's arrived in Oslo.
Was barred from running in the presidential election, despite having won the opposition's primary by a landslide. Later that year, she went into hiding after authorities expanded arrests of opposition figures following the disputed vote. Christopher Sabatini is a senior fellow for Latin America at Chatham House.
Prize has helped Maria Corina Machado in two very important ways. The first is it gave a strong signal of international validation to the democratic elections of 2024, or the undemocratic elections, but the democratic results, that had been forgotten. The second thing that it did is it elevated Maria Corina Machado to a person that now they can hang, the international community and the world can hang their hopes on, their aspirations. This helps a lot. It sounds like it's sort of fabricated, but oftentimes democratic movements need a face. They need a story.
Machado was due to receive the award in a ceremony at Oslo City Hall, and the event is expected to go ahead even in her absence. When Machado won the prize in October, she dedicated it in part to Donald Trump, who has said he himself deserved the honor. The US president is a fierce critic of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He has alleged that Maduro has links to criminal gangs that pose a direct threat to US national security, despite doubts raised by the US intelligence community. However, the Venezuelan leader says Trump is trying to overthrow him to gain access to the country's vast oil reserves. Washington has ordered more than 20 military strikes in recent months against alleged truck trafficking vessels in the Caribbean and off Latin America's Pacific coast. Human rights groups and several Latin American countries have condemned the attacks as unlawful extrajudicial killings of civilians. Some demonstrators protested against Machado in Oslo on Tuesday, criticizing her support for the American actions.
All right. So, anyways, I know it's technically a different story than the U.S. seizing the oil tanker. The timing of all this is very weird, though. And who knows, maybe it's connected in some way. Man. Magna Carta says no new wars. Puna Rebel says it is about oil. It's a big story. She just left Venezuela. Sounds like she got snuck out. Sneaked out? Let's see here. I think there's some other reporting about this tanker. Oh, there's a video on this too. I got a new Reuters video on the tanker. U.S. seizes sanctioned oil tanker off coast of Venezuela. Hey, a quick thank you to Louis R. Louis R. thinks she left Curacao on flight XAFUF, which landed in Bangor, Maine, and then on to Oslo. That's what Louis R. thinks. I have no idea if that's true. So the flight that Louis R. thinks that this is the flight that brought her to Oslo from the U.S. I do not know if that's true. Maybe you're right, Louis. I don't know. That's at Flight Radar 24. Thanks, Matthew Felty. Yes, Matthew mentions that the U.S. has a $50 million award for Maduro. We have talked about on this channel before. Reward offer increase of up to $50 million for information leading to arrest and conviction of Nicolas Maduro. That's from August 7th. Marco Rubio. Thanks to Ed Weeby for being a member. Thanks to Just Ben Wish 02 for being a member. Thank you, True Pain, for your support. Captain Jerry Donnelly for your support. Thank you, Captain Jerry Donnelly. Tenaj, 1367. Who is wondering if this is like the US Operation Ajax all over again, referring to a coup in Iran instigated by the US in 1953. Thank you, Tenash. Thank you, Leonette says, so sad we have become pirates. Thank you, Nice Try, and Firejack. Firejack, I would have to check the specifics on. Firejack says there's been a lot of seizures of oil tankers in recent years by the U.S. I would have to check, and I would have to see that, you know, if the circumstances are similar, if there's similar seizures or not. I do not know. I'd have to check it up. Thank you. Hold on a second here. So you can see Reuters updated their article a few minutes ago. U.S. seizes sanctioned oil tanker off coast of Venezuela. Okay, let's see what Reuters is reporting. The U.S. has seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, a move that sent oil prices higher and sharply escalated tensions between Washington and Caracas. President Trump, when asked what would happen with the oil, said, we keep it, I guess. Oh, the Venezuelan government issued a statement and accused the U.S. of blatant theft and described the seizure as an act of international piracy. Let me see if I can grab the Venezuela statement. I think they post on Instagram. Where is it? It's something like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or something. I had written it down before. Oh, I think I found, did I find it? No, I may have found it. It's from today. I found it. I found it. This is the statement from Venezuela. Let's see if I can translate it. All right, here it is, guys. I have the statement here. I have the statement. One moment. I'm going to pull it up for you. Okay, here we go. Here is the statement. You can see this right there. It says, Venezuela denounces and rejects energetically what constitutes a robbery, I think a blatant robbery, and an act of international piracy announced in a public manner by the President of the United States, who confessed to the assault of an oil tanker on the Caribbean Sea. This is not the first time he admitted this, or that he admits this. Already in his 2024 campaign, he openly said that his target always has been to keep the Venezuelan oil without paying any, I don't know what contra prestación, any compensation in return. Payment in return, basically. All right. Making clear that the policy of aggression against our country responds to a deliberate plan of, is that like robbing us of our riches, of our energy riches, energy wealth? Yeah. Despojar is loot. This new criminal act adds to the robbery of, is it Citgo? Important asset of the strategic lineage of all of Venezuelans. And I'm going to have to look up that word. Snatched through judicial fraudulent mechanisms and I don't know what is it Al Marjan? Is that outside of or to the edge of? Outside of any rule or norm. La humanidad está humanity is I don't know what that is. Despertando. Oh, humanity is waking up and fighting against the abuses, the imperialistic abuses of the North. As has been demonstrated in numerous and simultaneous demonstrations of protests in distinct states of the United States and cities of Europe. Then the last part of it says, I don't even think you can see it. The bottom says, the Venezuelan people also give, is that like thorough or strong demonstration in the streets of Venezuela to defend the peace of our country. Anyways, I probably did sort of not a great job translating that, but you get the basic idea. But they call this a blatant robbery and an act of international piracy, announced publicly by the President of the United States, who confessed to an assault on a oil tanker on the Caribbean Sea. So that's the official statement they posted on their Instagram, and that was posted when? Oops, sorry. Somehow I've activated the breaking news. That was posted about an hour ago, it looks like. About an hour ago. So, there you go. We got to the statement. Well, the Reuters article mentioned the statement. Hold on, I'll take some comments in a second. I was just reading the Reuters article, but they mentioned the statement. And then, the Venezuelan government said it defended sovereignty, national resources, and national dignity with absolute determination, and denounced the seizure of the tanker for international process. Did they post again about this? Was there another post by these? Hold on. Was there another post on Instagram by them? Anyways, wait a second. Reuters says this was the oil tanker called the Skipper. It was believed to have been seized early Wednesday. The incident was the first known action against an oil tanker since Trump ordered a massive military buildup in the region. The Skipper left Venezuela's main oil point of Jose between December 4th and 5th after loading about 1.1 million barrels of Venezuela's Mary heavy crude, according to satellite info analyzed by TankerTrackers.com, international shipping data from the Venezuelan state oil company PDVSA. Okay. By the way, I mean, West Texas intermediate crude costs about $60 a barrel. Brent crude costs $62 a barrel. Now, I believe they're selling this at a discount. But That's a fair amount of money value on that ship. If it's 1.1 million barrels of oil. Venezuela exported more than 900,000 barrels per day of oil last month, the third highest monthly average so far. Even as Washington increased pressure on Maduro, the U.S. has not previously moved to interfere with oil flows. Venezuela has had to deeply discount its crude to its main buyer, China, due to growing competition with sanctioned oil from Russia and Iran. One expert, Roy Johnson, said to Reuters, this is yet another geopolitical sanctions headwind hammering spot supply availability. Seizing this tanker further inflames those prompt supply concerns, but also doesn't immediately change the situation fundamentally because these barrels were already going to be floating around for a while. Maduro has alleged that the U.S. military buildup is aimed at overthrowing him and gaining control over the OPEC nation's vast oil reserves. As I'm sure most of you know, since early September, President Trump's administration has carried out more than 20 strikes against suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific, killing more than 80 people. Here, by the way, is this video that went along with this Reuters article. Let me show you this. Is this it right here? That's the Karina Machado one. Hold on.
Venezuelan opposition
we
leader.
want the other video. We need the other video. 1 second. Oh, I think I have it right here. Here's the other video.
President Donald Trump said on Wednesday the U.S. has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. The move raised oil prices and is likely to further inflame tensions between Washington and Caracas.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
Attorney General Pam Bondi said the tanker had been used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. The seizure could signal new and intensifying efforts to go after Venezuela's oil, the country's main source of revenue. The Venezuelan government did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump has ordered a massive U.S. military buildup in the region, including an aircraft carrier, fighter jets, and tens of thousands of troops. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has alleged that the U.S. military buildup is aimed at overthrowing him and gaining control of the OPEC nation's vast oil reserves. Since early September, the Trump administration has carried out more than 20 strikes against suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific, killing more than 80 people. Experts say the strikes may be illegal since there has been little to no proof made public that the boats are carrying drugs, or that it was necessary to blow them out of the water rather than stop them, seize their cargo, and question those on board.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. What I was saying is things seem to be ramping up in near Venezuela. Wow. I'm going to take some comments from you guys. This is the video that Attorney General Pam Bondi posted of the incident. And let me read some of your comments. Liam Fuzzy Bear thinks Trump put U.S. into war and Republicans don't care. One of our viewers asked if this was going to become a ground invasion. Sidewalk Connoisseur thinks these videos do not put the USA in a good light. We've had a couple of voters say I voted for this. Michael TTH says, amazing we haven't been doing this more often. RJ for Freedom says this could be Trump's Bay of Pigs. Ventura Highway says piracy on the high seas. The Sugaro says we're just practicing on Venezuela. One of our viewers said I voted not for this. WFT Jet thinks this is another 80-20 issue for Trump. This, as we were just saying, reportedly this ship had over 1 million barrels of oil in it. I don't know where the U.S. is going to take it. Hey, thanks, Drew Payne. Drew Payne says that Maria Corina Machado is in Oslo and waved from the Grand Hotel. Thank you, Drew Payne. Oh yes, I do see her waving from the Grand Hotel in Oslo. You are correct. You are correct. Let me see if I can get you a picture. But I just saw one. I don't know if I have the rights to it. Anyways, she is an author. Having been apparently snuck out of Venezuelan opposition Maria Corina Machado makes first public appearance 11 hours after the arrival in Oslo, having apparently been snuck out of the country. A day before this ship was seized. I don't know if there's a connection. Let me mention there's some other reporting on which we haven't even talked about that I want to mention as well. Okay, the New York Times says U.S. officials said they expected additional seizures in the coming weeks as parts of the administration's efforts to weaken Mr. Maduro's government by undermining its oil market. Wow. Hold on a second here. This is from the New York Times. New report I just saw from them. I think it's new. Let me just check. I posted something that they had reported earlier. Yes. So the New York Times says U.S. officials said they expected additional seizures of tankers. I assume it's of tankers in the coming weeks as part of the administration's efforts to weaken Mr. Maduro's government by undermining its oil market. Wow. That's new reporting from the New York Times. So are we going to be seeing a bunch more of these guys? What's going to happen? We did a poll earlier, and most of you think we're going to. Wall Street says if they do that, might as well blockade the entire country. Hasselhoff says it's a blockade, which is war, basically. Why not is the theme thinks that will bring their people together. Oh, you know what's interesting also? The New York Times reported that a federal judge, issued a seizure warrant for this ship around 2 weeks ago because of the ship's past activities smuggling Iranian oil. The Times also says that the ship may have been trying to conceal its whereabouts by broadcasting false location data. I don't know if that's true. The Times also points out that Venezuela's economy is hugely dependent on oil. Hugely. Look, as I said before, this is one ship. What I don't know is, something natural to ask is the goal from the is this the beginning of some sort of campaign to basically prevent the selling of oil? Are we going to see more of these in the coming weeks? And is the idea that ships won't even want to carry this oil? Sidewalk Connoisseur says, what happens if Venezuela starts putting armed troops on oil tankers to deter these seizures? Larry Martinez says a December surprise, perhaps? Lithrone says it's potentially a huge deal. Fight RC Log says, this is the U.S. military. They are trained to fight other military. This undermines our servicemen and women. SMH oil is up, by the way. By the way, thanks to Jewish Pickles, our member, and Sevenfold, our member, and Jerry Kovacs. Thank you, Jerry. Fred Flintstone gave 20 people memberships. That's so nice of you, Fred. Make sure you thank Fred or somebody else if they give you a gift membership or a gift subscription. Thanks, Tom Charles, our member. Also, thanks, Penolta, for the bits, and Octopus on Twitch, and CC on Twitch. Also, a shout out to our subscribers on Twitch, like Wall Street and Shaggy and Mudmore and Barcodable and Pretty Boy George, Mr. Ridley, Incredible, CC, Sugarrow, and others. Thanks to our Facebook subscribers too, like Robert Real II, Chuck Nostra, LT, Diane, Always. Thanks to Julie Shields for the Facebook stars. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, this feels like it could be a super huge deal if it's the start of some big campaign. Thanks also Amy Clark for the Facebook. Kevin Grove says, what next is my first thought? Thanks also to our YouTube members. Really appreciate it. I'm going to see if there's any other reporting I can find on this. And a couple outlets are saying that they're expecting more of these to happen. Maybe more are happening. Remember, originally the U.S. struck one alleged drug boat, and now it's over 20 happening. But it's a really big deal if the U.S. is going to try to prevent Venezuela from selling oil. Zilch thinks that a blockade would be a situation provoking or justifying war. Who owns the tanker? I don't know who owns the tanker. Colby Man thinks we do now. Chief Hung says America runs the waters. Pretty Boy Floyd says Trump enforces sanctions, everyone loses their mind. Mario HP says Venezuela is weak for not doing anything. Bob O'Bear says this will push other countries to buy from Russia. You know, Politico had reported that the ship was going to Cuba. Although I saw some other reports saying that much of this ends up in China and sometimes that it goes somewhere else first. So both could be true. Politico reported that this ship was not commercially trackable originally and probably had its automatic identification system turned off. Oh, also, okay. Oh, hold on. I might be able to find something about this ship. Supposedly it's on the Treasury Department's OFAC Specially Designated Nationals list. Sanctions list search. Type vessel name skipper. I'm doing a search right now to see if I can find the listing for it. Nothing came up. Politico said that this ship is registered to Triton Navigation, which is a corporation registered in the Marshall Islands. They say that the Department of the Treasury called this company that owns the ship one of the companies critical to the oil smuggling network supporting Iran's Hezbollah. Politico says that this could put pressure on shippers to not carry Venezuelan oil, which could, in theory, tighten global oil supply. is, remember that Attorney General Bondi said that this ship claimed that this ship in the past had carried what, Venezuelan and Iranian oil. He said the oil tanker had been sanctioned by the U.S. due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organizations. This crude oil tanker had been used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. Ray Ford says the U.S. are pirates. Adrienne says, ill-gotten gain will be ill-spent. Jamie Lazarus says, crazy stuff, man, crazy. I guess to me this doesn't feel like a one-off. It feels like this is part of something else. I don't know exactly where this all fits in. But again, multiple outlets are claiming that this very well could be, there might be more of these. This drone thinks it's nuts. The French says, who would have thought we'd turn pirates overnight? The ship is called the Skipper, reportedly. And the Skipper, according to marinetraffic.com, a marine tracking and shipping analytics provider, I believe it is. Marinetraffic.com. You can go there and track the ship, but they say that as of 2 minutes ago, this ship is moving underway using its engine, traveling to the northeast at 9.5 knots. Right there. That's Venezuela. You can see this is off the coast of Venezuela. There's Venezuela. See Venezuela. Right there. But you could go to marinetraffic.com and track the ship, the Skipper. By the way, for what it's worth, the New York Times is also reporting that this ship has faked its location before and frequently carried oil from countries under U.S. sanctions. And it has made multiple trips recently to Iran and Venezuela. That's all according to the New York Times. But someone might say, well, why now? Then why all of a sudden take the ship now? Hey, the Washington Post has an article. Let's see what they're saying. User thinks they have lost their ship to Mars. I just saw this Hang on. So this is the Washington Post article. Let's see if they have anything different. U.S. forces seized an oil tanker near the Venezuelan coastline. A significant escalation in the U.S. pressure campaign against President Maduro and his country's oil-dependent economy, guys. The country's oil-dependent economy. Don't forget that. Maybe while I'm looking at this, I'll make this small. You can look at it in the corner. Put right over here. We told you Pam Bondi said U.S. Coast Guard, FBI, and Homeland Security executed a search seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport oil from Venezuela and Iran in defiance of sanctions. The oil tanker had been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in an illicit shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organizations, she said. Trump said today this vessel was very large, the largest one ever seized, actually. He said other things are happening. You'll be seeing that later. And you'll be talking about that later with some other people. One person familiar with the seizure told the Washington Post that the tanker appeared to be carrying Venezuelan oil to Cuba. See that? I'm trying to shrink this here. I can only shrink it so much. The legal authority for the seizure was not clear. Washington has imposed sanctions on Venezuela and its state-owned oil company. Several administrations, including Trump's, have also sanctioned tankers alleging to be transporting illegal oil exports from countries under sanctions. Depending on what legal justification they use to seize the vessel, it could create a lot of problems for the regime. A person familiar with the seizure said. The person said the seizure could have a big financial impact on the Maduro regime. The seizure adds a new tactic to the Trump administration's months-long military campaign in waters near Venezuela. You know that they've been blowing up alleged drug boats. The Pentagon has dispatched 11 warships, scores of aircraft, and thousands of personnel to the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean in what it is described as an anti-drug trafficking mission. The buildup appears to be a pressure campaign to unseat Maduro, says the Washington Post, who Trump has alleged directs traffickers and criminals to assault the U.S. Venezuela boasts the world's largest proven oil reserves. But mismanagement, decrepit equipment, and U.S.-led sanctions have sharply limited output. The country is exporting a daily average of about 900,000 barrels, up from last year, but far below the 2.4 million barrels it exported daily in 2008. Its largest customers are China and the United States, which in July reissued a license to the U.S. energy giant Chevron to resume operations in Venezuela. In 2020, I talked about this earlier, in 2020 during the first Trump administration, the United States seized 1.1 million barrels of Iranian oil from 4 vessels that were headed to Venezuela, but they didn't seize the ships. Venezuelan oil provides a lifeline for Cuba, which, like Venezuela, is subject to heavy U.S. sanctions. I mean, is that also an aspect of what's going on here? Trying to weaken the Cuban regime? The communist island nation has suffered extensive blackouts this year because of limited fuel and aging infrastructure. But only a tiny percentage of Venezuelan oil goes to Cuba, said an expert. Okay. If the Trump administration continues seizing oil tankers in a systematic way, targeting those destined for China, that could significantly limit the willingness of black market fleets to go to Venezuela, dealing a major economic blow to Maduro. That would have a tremendous impact, the expert Minaldi said. But Maduro has maintained his grip on power through far worse economic circumstances, including during the 2020 coronavirus pandemic, when Venezuelan oil production plummeted to less than half of what it is today with much lower oil prices. This expert, Francisco Minaldi, said, "Is this going to be the worst economic pressure Maduro has felt? No, it will not be. That would require a massive blockade of Venezuelan exports," Minaldi said. "The economic pressure that Maduro felt in that period is unlikely to ever be felt, and he survived that." By the way, I'm not saying this will happen, but is there ever a world in which the U.S. ends up like attacking one of these oil tankers like it attacked the drug boats and just blowing it up to really dissuade other ones from going? I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It'd be a huge deal, obviously. But I don't know. The seizure of the oil tanker was announced hours after opposition leader Maria Corina Machado missed the Oslo ceremony to collect her Nobel Peace Prize, but she ended up showing up hours later. She has shown up in Oslo. Oh, by the way, Damnian says that would destroy the oil. Well, I guess maybe if you're going to do that, you would attack an empty one. Right, because people are saying if it's full of oil, it would create an environmental disaster. But what if the U.S. tried to attack a ship that was going to pick up oil? Lonely Reject says, "I doubt the U.S. would risk an ecological disaster." Anyway, that article from the Post is sort of interesting. There's just this question of where is this going? And is this meant to be is this the start of some sort of, in effect, blockade on Maduro selling his oil, which is extremely important to the economy of Venezuela? How about we're going to do a quick poll, one more quick poll. Will Maduro leave office during the Trump administration? There you go. Yes or no? In any way leaving office. So it's up to you. Will he be out of office? Let's see what you guys have to say. Oops, this is not funny. Let's play the video. Here is as we play the video, it's just a striking video. I've seen it like 30 times, and every time I see it, it's striking every time I see it. Knowing those are American forces. Today, or Wednesday. Today where I am. All right, so here is what you guys said. Over there on YouTube, 61% of you think that Maduro will leave office in the Trump administration. How about on Twitter? Joss Sauce thinks Maduro is a dead man's body. Over on Twitch, they're kind of split. 55% will say he will leave during the Trump administration. 42% say no. Angel Safai says American forces are awesome. Nav thinks it's a diversion from the Epstein files. Sunshine says, it's embarrassing for me to see U.S. resources used to harass another country for their natural resources. There's another interesting question. I mean, one of our viewers said something like, this doesn't look good for the U.S. it is an interesting question of how this kind of video is perceived around the world and what it makes people think of the U.S. fairly or unfairly around the world. One of our viewers, Up, says it looks fantastic from where I'm sitting. The Knights Palace thinks it's perceived as don't F with the United States. Florida Q says it makes us look weak. By the way, thanks SMCon for subscribing on Twitch. Hold on a second here. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more about this. And this kind of thing. I just have a feeling. I can't imagine this is a one-off. What is this here? Hold on a second here. We'll take a few more comments here from people. Karen Moore thinks this would have happened 4 years ago if Biden was not in office. Trump has been laying the groundwork for years. She says Trump says immigrants are bad, especially from countries south of our border. Then months or longer of how terrible Maduro is. He's been saying how many people die from drugs. Now he's starting on Colombia. This has nothing to do with immigration or drugs, Karen Moore thinks. Purely power grab. We have seen this before in history. Thanks, Karen, for writing in. Michael Lauzone thinks this is terrorism. Thanks, Michael, for writing in. Oh, thanks for voting in our poll, by the way. Oopsie. I messed up here. Thanks for voting in our poll. Let me just see if I have any updated reporting for you. I'm expecting more to come out about this. There hasn't been a lot of, I mean, that Pam Bondi X post is really the only official statement from the government, which is not very detailed. I haven't seen like a big statement from the State Department yet or something. I would think we might get more at some point. Oh, guys, I have an update from AP. AP says half of the seized ship's oil is tied to a Cuban importer. The seized tanker was identified as the skipper by a U.S. official who was not authorized to comment publicly. The ship departed Venezuela around December 2nd. Now, this says 2 million barrels. The ship departed Venezuela around December 2nd with about 2 million barrels of heavy crude, roughly half of it belonging to a Cuban state-run oil importer, according to documents from the state-owned company. Petróleos de Venezuela. The documents were, so AP got these documents somehow. The ship was previously known as the MT Adisa, according to ship tracking data. The Adisa was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2022 over accusations of belonging to a sophisticated network of shadow tankers that smuggled crude oil on behalf of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group. The network was reportedly run by a Switzerland-based Ukrainian oil trader. Superdunk says, all of that yummy, yummy oil. Awesome Mopotamus says, yay, we're oil pirates. C. Serwin says, stolen oil on a stolen boat. Oh, here's a picture of Marina. There is the Venezuelan opposition leader, who apparently was snuck out of Venezuela. And there's a picture of her at the Grand Hotel in Oslo, Norway, early Thursday, so a short time ago. Again, the whole thing is very strange, because would she really risk escaping and getting caught escaping just to go to the award ceremony? And if she wanted to get out with I mean, wouldn't she just want to get out? I can't. To me, it doesn't really make sense that she would leave just for the award ceremony. And as we've been saying, you know, if you're an opposition leader, it can hurt your credibility possibly to leave. So it's all very strange. And let me show you that photo, though. Wall Street Journal was saying before they thought maybe her leaving would allow more strong action by the U.S. now that she's out of the country. Oh, here's the picture. Hang on. Oh, I got it. Sorry. Let me get that picture of her. Download. I think it worked. Give me 1 second. One moment here. I'm getting this photo for you. I told you I'd show you the photo of her, so I saw it. Oh, I don't think they have it there. Maybe I can't download it. What can I do? Oh, sorry. I was the wrong page. Boy, I'm doing a really bad job of showing you this photo. I'm telling you, I'm going to get this photo for you. Hang on, guys. There's the article. This is taking way too long. I think it's actually working. I got the photo. Here is the photo of Maria Corina Machado in Oslo, Norway. I guess hours ago, sometime in the last few hours. There she is from AP. There is the picture. As I said, I have a hard time believing they're going to smuggle her back in Venezuela. Grace Horton says the rightful leader. I feel like this story isn't being talked about enough. It's very intriguing what's going on with that. And as I said before, not to repeat myself, the Wall Street Journal originally said in their article tonight, but I think they changed this, but I did cut and paste it in their article. The Wall Street Journal had said in their article tonight, they said that the oil tanker seizure came just hours, they said, after the U.S. sneaked her out on a boat, an escape that potentially gave the Trump administration an opening to take more aggressive action against the Maduro regime. They originally said the U.S. snuck her out. But now the article says the tanker got seized hours after Maria Corina Machado left the country on a boat. So the article no longer says the U.S. snuck her out, but it still says an escape that potentially gave the Trump administration an opening to take more aggressive action against the Maduro regime. Then they have a whole report, the Wall Street Journal, they have a whole article, you can go over there and check it out if you want, on reporting about her leaving the country the day on Tuesday. She had basically been hiding all year, avoiding arrest in Venezuela. By the way, the Wall Street Journal about her leaving Venezuela is based on U.S. officials they talked to. And it says that her allies worked to keep the trip from becoming public. So anyways. Again, this seems like Barcode says this is important news. It's just very interesting that she has left the country. Right, she's the opposition leader. Basically, when people voted in the election, what was it, last year, whenever it was, that the evidence suggested that the opposition won by a lot, Rivera said he won. She wasn't allowed to run, but basically she was the candidate. She wasn't the official candidate, but it was understood she was the head of the opposition. FEMA says, did she sneak out on an oil tanker? I don't know what to make of all this. It's just very interesting. Justin D. Winter says, very interesting. The reporting on this, I mean, most of the reporting is like, oh, she made it to collect her prize. It's like, well, but the bigger story is that she left the country. Regardless of her making the award ceremony or being there to collect her prize. Yeah, we did cover that. We were covering the election when it happened. That's why everyone remembers that. This is a whole other thing. I'm not inferring anything. It just seems, it just feels like there's more to that story than it's like, hey, sneak me out so I can collect my prize. It just feels like there's more than that. Yeah, the Wall Street Journal says she was disguised in a wig and that she slipped through military checkpoints. You can look it up on the Wall Street Journal. They said she was wearing a wig and she was in disguise. The Wall Street Journal says in this article that they posted about her escape, they say the Trump administration was aware of the escape operation, but the extent of the Trump administration's involvement was unclear. Anyways, you can look it up in the Wall Street Journal if you want, which it's probably going to be paywall to it, but if you have access to it, you can read it through it. GTG says, sounds like a CIA operation. I mean, to be honest, I would be shocked if there was a big operation to have her leave and the U.S. wasn't involved. Joe Soul mentions that AZ Intel posted a video. I cannot show the video. I don't have the rights to it. AZ Intel and Faytux Network posted a video of her in Oslo. I'll post the link in the chat so you can see the video of her in Oslo. Patricia Gray says, I bet it feels amazing not to be in hiding. Although if you're her, you're probably, you very well might be concerned that no matter where in the world you are, someone might come after you. So I don't know that she feels like perfectly secure. I mean, obviously, I'm sure she's not like, I'm out of there, great. I mean, her goal is to have a change of regime in the country and to have the country be different. All right, guys, I think it's time. Hey, thanks, Jay Ducey. Jay Ducey10 for your support. I really appreciate it. Jay Ducey10. That's really nice of you. And also, Daryl Nelson from Seinfeld. Thanks for the memberships. That's very nice of you. And also, KWNY Upstate. Very much appreciate that. And also, David Rowe 6816, who says, is the Monroe Doctrine being enacted? And 400 Yards, thanks for being a member. Also, Martin Ging, thanks for your support. And Robert Kosinski, our member. And Peanut Butter Jelly for your support. Also, C. Johnson, who says, this is just a diversion. The real play is Greenland. Thanks, Gen Xer, also. And Mosh Miri 51. Very much appreciate that. And Sevenfold and Jewish Pickles are members. I did want to mention, some of our viewers have mentioned the Monroe Doctrine. Wikipedia, the Monroe Doctrine is the United States foreign policy position that opposes European colonialism in the Western Hemisphere. It holds that any intervention in the political affairs of the Americas by foreign powers is a potentially hostile act against the United States. The doctrine was central to American grand strategy in the 20th century. President Monroe, James Monroe, first articulated the doctrine in 1823. Monroe asserted that further efforts by European powers to control or influence sovereign states in the U.S. in the region, in the Americas, would be viewed as a threat to U.S. security. It's interesting, though. I don't know that if Trump wants to assert greater control over countries in the Americas like Venezuela. I mean, the way this reads is the Monroe Doctrine is more about keeping foreign powers out. But, I mean, that's not really Trump's or the Trump administration's focus with Venezuela. They claim it's about drugs, but, you know, some people think it's more about regime change. But it doesn't really seem like, even if you think it's about regime change, it's not because, I mean, the people analysts I've seen who think it's more about regime change don't think it's regime change because Venezuela is just like a figurehead for some other country. I mean, obviously, Venezuela has positive relations, with other countries that the U.S. might not be friendly with, but it seems like a bit different than Monroe Doctrine. It seems more like a everything in the Americas we maintain tight control over, which is not exactly the same as other countries don't interfere with countries in the Americas. Do you see what I'm saying? Jay Recon thinks it's about natural resources. Anyways, though, I'm not an expert on the Monroe Doctrine, so I was just offering a way to look at it. Feel free to disagree with me. Hobo Snail says, thinking it's about drugs and not regime change is naive. The Critical Chris says he'll be the anti-war president. All right. I think, let me just make sure I don't have any other big things to report on this. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this in the coming days. There might even be other ships that are seized. No kind of press briefing or anything has to, with answering questions about this or anything at this point. Maybe sometime in the future. ABC News says this kind of tanker can carry up to around 2 million barrels of oil. Oh, Kash Patel. I didn't even realize that Kash Patel posted about this too. I was showing you the post from Pam Bondi about this. Kash Patel said, today the FBI and our partners executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. Similar language than that Bondi used. The tanker had been used in recent years in an illicit shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organizations. Proud of our great partners who executed the mission with us. DHS, Secretary Noem, Homeland Security, Coast Guard, Secretary of War, Pam Bondi, and many more. This administration's efforts to crush foreign terrorist organizations and cut off their resources will continue day and night. Gary Bain says, Trump is flexing his power. Dean R. says, warrant key word. Axios believes that the seizing of this ship is a dramatic escalation of the Trump administration's standoff with Venezuela. Something else that Axios points out, they say Cuba makes money by taking Venezuelan crude and selling it. So, I was talking about Cuba before. One of the reports said that this ship was heading to Cuba, I think Politico, and I was saying, could this be designed to hurt Cuba as well? And Axios said, one of their sources said, this is a twofer. We're going after Maduro's bank account and the Cubans that keep him in power. Axios says in the first term, the U.S. seized a tanker en route to Venezuela from Iran. Is that true? I don't know. Anyways. Oh, hold on a second here. So Marine Traffic actually posted about this. This is interesting. So Marine Traffic, which I showed you before, marinetraffic.com, it's like flight radar for ships, as one of our viewers said. Marine Traffic is a ship tracking and